On a staircase in the mountains of Mordor, Gollum came back, not all the way, and not for long, but for a few seconds on a cold stair above a dead city. The creature that had carried the ring for 478 years stopped being Gollum and was Smeagol again. Frodo was asleep with his head in Sam's lap. Gollum had been off in the dark arranging something unforgivable, and he came back. And he stood there and looked at the two of them lying together, and something went across his face. Tolkien describes an old, tired hobbit reaching out, a hand on Frodo's knee, almost a caress. Then Sam woke up. Sam saw the hand, and he saw the creature attached to it, and he used the word sneaking, and the window shut. It never opened again. Tolkien wrote about that moment in a letter to his son. He called it the tragedy of Gollum, who came within a hair of repentance, but for one rough word from Sam, one rough word from the most decent character in the book. Nobody in the story ever knew how close it was. Frodo slept through it. Sam went to his grave believing he had caught a thief in the act, and Gollum went down into the dark of Shelob's lair and never came near the surface of himself again. So here is the thing you have to understand before that scene can land properly, because without it, it is just a monster having a strange moment. There was something there to come back to. Gollum was a hobbit, an actual hobbit, the same species as Frodo asleep on that stair, same species as Sam standing over him, about to say the wrong word. Most of the hobbits you know about are Harfoots, hill people, burrow people, the ancestral core of what became the Shire. But there was another kind, Stoors, broader, heavier, the only hobbits who were ever comfortable around deep water. Stoors fished, Stoors used boats, Stoors lived in flat river country instead of green hills. Smeagol was a Stoor, and almost everything that reads as monstrous about him later is a Stoor trait, with the volume turned all the way up. The raw fish, the boat he keeps on the underground lake, the comfort in the dark and the wet. None of that came from somewhere else. It was already in him. Whatever the ring did to him, it did by feeding what was already in there and starving everything else. His people lived on the banks of the Anduin, generations before the Shire existed. One family hole dug into the riverbank, larger and wealthier than most, run by his grandmother, who Tolkien calls stern and wise in old lore. Smeagol grew up in that house knowing riddles. He knew stories about the War of the Last Alliance, which is not common knowledge for a river hobbit. He was curious about roots and beginnings. He was, in another life, the family know-it-all, the one who corrects you at dinner. Then there is a birthday. Third age 2463. Smeagol and his cousin Deagol take a boat out on the Gladden Fields, where the Anduin spreads into marsh and reed. Deagol is fishing. Smeagol is nosing about on the bank, digging, because that is the kind of hobbit he is. A big fish takes Deagol's line and pulls him under. He comes up with weeds in his hair and a handful of river mud, and in the mud there is a gold ring. Smeagol asks for it. It is his birthday, and he wants it. And he says so. Deagol says no. He had already handed over a present that morning grudgingly because Deagol was a mean little soul about money. He found the ring, so he is keeping it. And that is the whole conversation. Two cousins on a riverbank arguing about a birthday present, the way people who have known each other their whole lives argue about small things. Deagol is the closest thing Smeagol has to a friend, and he is also the only person in this story who ever tells Smeagol no and makes it stick. Smeagol strangles him, hides the body in the marsh where it is never found, walks home with it in his pocket. That is the last real decision Smeagol ever gets to make. Everything after is the object doing its job, but the transformation was not fast. And the slowness is the part people miss. At first, he uses it the way any resentful, clever young hobbit would use a magic ring. He goes invisible and listens at doors. He finds out what his neighbors say about him when he is not there, which is the worst possible thing for a person like Smeagol to learn. He steals small things, and his family notices, not the ring. They never knew about the ring. They notice him. People start avoiding him. They curse him and kick at him when he gets too close, and he bites their feet. He stops talking to anyone except himself, muttering and making a swallowing noise in his throat, and that noise is where the name comes from. His neighbors named him after a sound he made. Therefore, the thing that actually finished him off was his grandmother. She threw him out, the stern one, running a household larger and wealthier than most, wanting peace in her own hole more than she wanted this grandson in it. She had no way of knowing what she was doing. As far as she knew, she was removing a difficult young relative who had turned nasty and would not stop stealing. And that expulsion is where the machine really starts running, because until then, the ring had been working against friction. Meals with other hobbits is friction. Being told off is friction. Community slows the process down. Not because community is virtuous, but because it keeps interrupting. Take the friction away, and there is nothing left to slow anything. Now stop for a second and look at what Tolkien is actually doing here. because once you see it, you cannot stop seeing it. He runs the same experiment 3 times. Same species, same object, 3 different sets of conditions. Smeagol gets the longest exposure and total isolation, and what comes out the other end is barely a person. Bilbo gets 60 years in a warm hole in the Shire with a garden and neighbors and far too much food, and it barely touches him. He goes secretive and snappish when anyone brings it up, and he describes the feeling himself, stretched, thin, like butter scraped over too much bread. Frodo gets 17 years of ownership, but only months of real pressure, and those months are the worst conditions anyone gets. Hunted the whole way, stabbed with a Morgul blade, walking toward the source the entire time, so the pull gets stronger with every mile. And Frodo does not make it either. That is the uncomfortable answer. Smeagol got the longest exposure and the worst conditions, and nobody survives those. Bilbo only came out intact because he happened to be carrying it in a village full of people who kept making him come to dinner. So Smeagol goes north up the Anduin, then west, then up. The sunlight starts to physically hurt him. His skin and his eyes stop tolerating daylight, so he follows a stream into the roots of the Misty Mountains, looking for shade, and he finds a cave with cold water and no light at all. He goes in around Third Age 2470. He comes out in 2941, when a burglar falls down a tunnel and lands in the dark next to him. That is roughly 470 years underground. A hobbit lives about 100 years. A long-lived one might reach 130, so Smeagol outlasts 3.5 normal hobbit lifetimes down there, and the ring is the only reason. But nobody was doing him a favor. It keeps its bearer breathing, because a breathing bearer keeps carrying it. He is being maintained the way you keep a tool oiled, and he does not spend those centuries frozen. He has a boat. He catches blind fish with his hands and eats them raw. He catches bats and the occasional orc that wanders too far down and is too slow. That is a person adapting, alone, for longer than most civilizations last. He also starts talking to himself in 2 voices. People read that as the ring splitting him in half. It is simpler and worse. He belongs to an intensely social species, and he has been alone in the dark for centuries, so the mind manufactures a second person, because there has to be someone to talk to. But here is the part that makes the whole thing unbearable. He does not forget. Think about what happens when Bilbo falls down that tunnel. Gollum has not seen another thing that could talk in centuries. He is faster, he is hungry, he is on his own ground in total darkness, and Bilbo is a soft, lost, middle-aged hobbit with no idea where he is. There is no contest. Gollum could end it in 10 seconds. He proposes a riddle game instead, and the riddles are old ones. Some of them are the same riddles hobbits in the Shire were still telling each other on the other side of the world, because both peoples got them from the same place. He learned them in that hole in the riverbank, from the grandmother who threw him out, on afternoons with the sun on the water. That is what survived. Not his name, not his face, not his language, not one single relationship. 5 centuries in the dark. And what is still intact is his grandmother's riddle game, and enough of the hobbit underneath to want to play it with the first person who has come down that tunnel in living memory. He is not a monster who forgot he was a hobbit. He is a hobbit with a monster grown over the top of him, and every so often the hobbit gets a hand through, which brings us back to the stairs. By now, Gollum has been guiding Frodo and Sam for weeks. He has sworn an oath on the ring itself. He has also, that same night, gone off in the dark to make an arrangement with the spider in the pass, because the plan is to let Shelob do the killing and take the ring off whatever is left. He comes back from that errand and finds them asleep. Frodo with his head in Sam's lap, both of them exhausted, completely undefended, and Tolkien stops the book to describe his face. A strange expression goes over it. What he looks like in that moment is old and hungry and tired, and there is something in it that has not surfaced since the riverbank. He reaches out one hand and touches Frodo's knee. That is it. That is the whole recovery. A hand on a sleeping hobbit's knee. Sam wakes up, and Sam, who has been right about Gollum every single time, who has watched this creature lie and scheme and lead them into worse and worse country, sees a hand reaching toward Frodo in the dark and says exactly what any sane person would say. He calls it sneaking, and Gollum takes the word and puts it on like a coat. He answers Frodo later with it. Nothing for Smeagol. He is a sneak. He was given that name by kind Master Samwise, the hobbit who knows so much. Tolkien came back to this scene for the rest of his life. In one letter, he calls it the tragedy of Gollum, undone by one rough word. Decades later, in another, he is still turning it over, and he puts it plainly, Sam missed it. Sam did not notice that the tone and the whole aspect of the thing in front of him had changed. Sam was not being cruel. Sam was being correct. That is what makes it terrible. Every piece of evidence Sam had pointed the same way, and the one time the evidence was wrong, was the only time it mattered. And watch how fast it closes. Within hours, Gollum has walked them into the tunnel. The spider is coming, and Frodo is on the floor wrapped in web. There is no second attempt at the hand on the knee. Whatever came up through him on that stair goes back down and stays down. So read Frodo again, knowing all of this. Frodo protects Gollum constantly. He overrules Sam about it again and again, in a way that never quite gets explained on the page. Sam reads it as softness, and Sam is wrong about that. Frodo is the only person in the story who can see what Gollum actually is, because Frodo is carrying the same object and can feel the same thing starting. Every time he looks at Gollum, he is looking down the road he is walking. If Gollum is beyond saving, then so is Frodo eventually, and he is right in the end for reasons nobody intends. Frodo fails at Mount Doom. He was always going to. Tolkien is clear that the task was impossible, that nobody carrying that thing could have thrown it away at the last step. What destroys the ring is Gollum, biting because he wants it more than he wants his own life. And Gollum is only alive to do it because Frodo would not let Sam kill him in the swamps. So the two moments sit against each other. Sam's mercy would have saved Smeagol on the stairs, and Sam did not give it. Frodo's mercy kept Gollum alive in the marshes, and it saved everything. Neither of them knew what they were doing. Neither of them ever found out. That is what you are looking at when you look at that creature in the cave. A Stoor hobbit from a family on the Anduin who wanted a birthday present he was not offered and paid 478 years for it, and got about 3 seconds of himself back on a staircase before the person guarding his best friend told him to get lost. If you want more of these, subscribe and tell me in the comments who you want pulled apart next, because I do read them and I do pick from them.